The other day, I was walking to the park over on 3rd Street. I have to admit to feeling a little blue at the time. It wasn't anything in particular bothering me, but more like being at the ocean and several things all coming together on the same emotional wave. You ever have days like that? Probably the thing which stood out the most on my mind was that day being the 2nd anniversary of my mum passing. Stood out the most is rather an understatement, I suppose. It was like a horn blaring. Mum and I had been pretty close, and not a day passed when I didn't think of her. Today, however, was especially significant. Keeping someone alive in your mind is one way to stay connected to that person. But every so often reality comes to the forefront, bringing a touch of depression with it. I had never known my dad because he had been killed in Vietnam 6 months after I was born. When George Jones released the rock Stone Cold Country 2001 album, one song included was entitled 50,000 Names. It's all about all the names of dead American servicemen and women carved into the Vietnam War Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. I cry when I hear that song. Not because of my father, I never knew him, but because of my mum. I think she went off to her room at least once a week and played that song. And every time she played it, I could hear her crying. I suppose I do cry a bit because of the father I never had. But my mum never got over losing him. And for her, I cry. My mum spent a lot of time reading to me before I started school. She no longer had a husband to care for, but she had a daughter who needed her, and she made damn sure I knew I was loved. We had stacks of second-hand books she had bought at the thrift stores, and we made regular trips to the library for more. I have such a vivid picture in my mind of sitting on her lap while she read to me. And I'll never forget those warm summer days when she packed a lunch and took me to the park on 3rd Street. She sat me down on the bench next to her and read for several hours. That's one memory I'll never forget. Getting back to the point of this story, have you ever seen in your peripheral vision something like a bird flying towards you? My first inclination was to swat the thing away. Fortunately, in this case, I missed. I jumped back a step to see what it was. Imagine my surprise when what I thought was a bird turned out to be a fairy. Now, I know that from time to time, I'm given to exercises of the far-reaching imagination. But this was not the case, I can assure you. What startled me even more than actually seeing something I had read about from my youth, but never thought real, the fairy was a female, and more to the point, her face was a perfect likeness to my mum in her youth. I had seen enough pictures of my mum to know this to be the case. I had to rub my eyes several times to make sure I wasn't imagining what I was seeing. For some reason, it didn't surprise me that in her hands was a book. She fluttered her wings a bit and came to rest on my shoulder. Fortunately for me, I had been standing next to the bench she and I had often sat on. As soon as I sat down, she patted me on the shoulder and started reading a story I was very familiar with from the book. Her voice was as clear to me as it had been when I was a child. The same love, the same tenderness permeated the story she read. Needless to say, tears were falling down my cheeks. "Do not be dismayed, sweetie," she said to me. "I will always be here with you." That said, she closed the book as her little wings started flapping. She rose up and kissed the tears on my cheek before she started to fly away. Before leaving, she flew around me for a few minutes, as if circling me with her love.